Stop being lazy. If you're not going to help with the chores, then just go. My mother-in-law, Cecilia, barked at me. Rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, I pulled myself up from the couch. A quick glance at the clock told me I'd only been asleep for about half an hour. I was just trying to catch a quick cat nap during a hectic day of balancing housework and my job, but it looked like Cecilia had other plans. "You don't deserve a break. Get cracking. If not, hit the road," she demanded, glaring at me, clearly irritated. That seemed to be her catchphrase every time I woke up. Was she just stuck on repeat? Half out of it, I stared back at her, wondering, is she really trying to kick me out? Well, if that's what she wanted. Fine then. See ya, I muttered, heading to my room. As I walked, I thought to myself, well, maybe I shouldn't have fallen asleep in the living room. As soon as I got into my room, I locked the door and crawled into bed. I closed my eyes, determined to get out of this house as soon as I woke up. My name is Hannah, a 32-year-old who works from home. I'm married to a 27-year-old guy named Adrian. He's 5 years younger and quite the looker. At our wedding, people couldn't stop commenting. "When did you land such a hot younger guy?" my friends would tease. Who knew Hannah was so shallow? I remember turning red and retorting, "It's not like that. I didn't marry Adrian just because he was eye candy. Sure, I liked the way he looked, but I fell for him because I felt a need to be there for him. We both worked at the same company originally, and he was my subordinate. Among the new hires, he was diligent but also quite a klutz, prone to making errors. But instead of making things awkward, he had this infectious cheerfulness that always lightened the mood. That was the kind of guy he was. Sometimes, after work, we'd hit a bar with coworkers and have heart-to-heart chats. I thought it was best to keep things casual since we were just office buddies, but he didn't hesitate to open up. "I'm still living with my parents, while everyone else is out on their own," Adrian would say with a sigh. "I just don't see the point in moving out yet." His honesty surprised me. He often felt like his dates were more interested in his looks than in who he really was. "They say the vibe's off, that I'm just not what they want," he'd say, shaking his head. I knew he wasn't Mr. Perfect. I saw his goof-ups at work all the time, but somehow that made his personal blunders kind of cute to me. I guess I fell for him before he even realized it. Maybe he felt comfortable because, even though I was his boss and older, I never meddled in his personal life. He started asking me out more and more. Then, when I decided to quit my job to launch my own business, he dropped a bombshell after my farewell party. "I don't want us to be separated like this," he confessed awkwardly, staring at his shoes. "I've been holding back, but I have feelings for you. I feel at ease when I'm around you. I want you to be there for me," he admitted. His confession was sweet, if not a little clumsy, but instead of promising to make me happy, his words were all about how I could be there for him. Still, his sincerity won me over, and we started dating. At the time, I probably should have sought advice about dating Adrian. But thinking my friends would only mock me, I kept our relationship secret, even from my parents. Whenever they'd ask, "So when's the big day?" I'd dodge the question, afraid of the barrage of comments I knew would follow. I didn't tell them about Adrian until the ring was already on my finger. Looking back, maybe someone would have asked the tough questions. "Isn't he just leeching off you, Hannah?" Or, "What's he really bringing to the table?" I was usually the one paying for our outings since I was earning more. Adrian never seemed to mind. In fact, I can't recall him ever reaching for his wallet. He'd always flash me that wide grin and say, "Thanks again," and it never struck me as odd at the time. Now, I wonder if he was just taking advantage. Adrian had this mentality, where it was normal for the older person to pick up the slack, but he thought it was crucial to show gratitude. He didn't see anything wrong with it. Maybe he saw me more as a trusty grown-up than a girlfriend. In the professional world, seniors usually pick up the tab for juniors, and it seemed like he applied the same logic to our dates. We tied the knot before anyone could point out the odd dynamics in our relationship. My folks were thrilled when they heard wedding bells, but Adrian's mom wasn't exactly overjoyed when she learned I was 5 years older than him. She gave me a once-over, then turned to Adrian and asked, "Are you sure about this? You need to think about kids, too. I thought you'd end up with someone younger." Adrian just shrugged, grinning as usual. Ever heard the phrase, an older wife makes for a better life? I can be a bit of an airhead at times, so having Hannah to catch my slip-ups is ideal. We're a match made in heaven, don't you think? His mom, though caught off guard, didn't put up any further fuss about our wedding after that. I mean, she didn't seem totally against it before we got hitched, but now that we're sharing a roof, she's downright critical of our lifestyle. Honestly, I almost wish she had objected from the beginning if this is how she was going to act. One day, she's barking, "Hannah, you haven't cleaned my room today, have you? Get your chores done before you hide out in your room." Adrian and I moved in with his folks last winter after his dad unexpectedly passed. We were concerned about his mom living alone, so Adrian suggested we move in with her. Honestly, I wasn't thrilled about shacking up with my mother-in-law, who had given me the cold shoulder right from the start, but I couldn't bear the thought of leaving her high and dry. So Adrian and I ended up moving into his childhood home to keep an eye on her. However, this marked the start of my own personal nightmare. Despite being Adrian's pick, his mom never really took a shine to me. From the day we set up shop, she cornered me while he was busy unpacking in his room, whispering, "This house doesn't have room for freeloaders. You'd better earn your keep." Adrian had told me his mom was thrilled about us staying, but as I suspected, it seemed she was over the moon to have her boy back, not so much his wife. After she left, I let out a sigh, careful not to let her hear it. Could I make it in this house? The verdict was out in less than 3 months. The answer was a resounding no. It became clear pretty quickly that a decent life with a mother-in-law like that was impossible. I had always thought moms doted on their kids, even when they were all grown up. Adrian's mom took it to a whole new level. If there was anything on his plate that didn't suit his fancy, she'd avoid it. She'd painstakingly debone fish for him, making it seem like he wasn't a grown man, but a little boy. Her kindness, however, never extended to me. Quite the opposite. She seemed to view me as an adversary, forever saying things like, "Will you get a move on with the house chores already?" I'll never understand why he brought such an incompetent wife home. What really got to me was that no matter how many times I explained myself, she couldn't wrap her head around the concept of working from home. I told her, I do work at home. I'm not a slacker just because I'm remote. But she labeled me lazy and blew up over me not doing housework, yelling, "Slackers don't get a free pass." It was absurd how she never pulled these stunts when Adrian was around. I figured I'd run myself into the ground at this rate, so I started recording her with a voice recorder, hoping to catch her in the act. The moment Adrian left the house, she'd pounce. "Stop twiddling your thumbs, you lazy elf," she'd sneer, using words she'd never dare to say in front of him. I recorded everything and played it back to Adrian when he got home, but after hearing it, he just shrugged. "Well, my mom has had her hands full as a full-time homemaker. Please just grin and bear it and do your family duty." I wanted to scream at him, "She's your mom, not mine." He was okay with it because she was his mom, and he had never been on the receiving end of her attitude. But I couldn't stand her. I thought we should have a serious conversation, but with work piling up, and Cecilia, as usual, offloading housework onto me, I was running on fumes. Around lunchtime, I hit a wall and decided to sneak in a quick nap. I crashed on the living room couch, hoping to recharge. Not long after, Cecilia jolted me awake. "Quit lounging around. If you're not going to pitch in with the chores, then leave." Rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, I glanced at the clock. I'd only been asleep for about half an hour. I wasn't slacking. I was just trying to catch a quick break during a hectic day balancing work and housework. But she wasn't having it. When I looked up, she was glaring at me. "You don't deserve a break. Get cracking. If not, hit the road," she stated angrily. Why was she coming down on me when all I was trying to do was catch some rest? She called me a slacker, but she was home all the time and never lifted a finger. Wasn't she the real slacker here? I was fuming. My blood was boiling, and I finally snapped. "Fine then. See ya." I shot back and stormed off to my room. Honestly, I probably shouldn't have fallen asleep in the living room, but I couldn't take her nagging anymore. As soon as I got to my room, I locked the door and crawled into bed, deciding that I'd leave the house the moment I woke up. I wondered if Cecilia really thought I'd leave like she suggested. This time at least, she didn't disturb my sleep. When I woke up, it was well past dinner time. Normally, Cecilia would be barking. What are you slacking off for? Adrian's going to be home soon. Start making dinner now. But there were no loud voices this time. On a hunch, I tiptoed downstairs, careful not to make a sound. The house was quiet. Neither Cecilia nor Adrian was there, and her shoes weren't at the entrance. I thought maybe they had gone out to eat together when he got home. Not wanting to see either of them, I figured this was my chance. Quickly, I started packing my things. As I packed, I called a friend who lived nearby. She listened to my whole story and exclaimed, "What? Your mother-in-law's the worst. Run away. I'll help you escape." An hour later, she showed up at our house in a small truck, ready to help me get out of there. By then, both Cecilia and Adrian had returned from their meal. They were shocked to see the truck parked in front of the house, even more so when they saw me loading my belongings onto it. Cecilia's lips curled into a smirk, as if she were saying, "Finally, you're leaving." This is refreshing. Adrian, standing next to her, looked bewildered. He didn't seem to grasp what was happening, but Cecilia? She looked almost pleased. Adrian approached me with a worried look. "Hannah? What on earth? Are you collecting trash?" he asked. I stared at him, trying to hold back my frustration. He still didn't get it. He was the kind of person who didn't think it was a big deal even after hearing the recording of his mother's verbal abuse toward me. He probably didn't know or want to know how much pressure I'd been under from her. I motioned toward the truck. "Does this look like trash to you, Adrian?" "I'm leaving," I replied firmly. He looked confused, his gaze shifting to the furniture. It should have been obvious that I wasn't here for trash collection, but to leave this house. The thing was, he wasn't even aware of the furniture I owned. What's in the truck is all I had, I thought bitterly. In the end, he was never interested in me at all. I glanced at Cecilia before turning to Adrian. I couldn't keep this hidden any longer. "I told you that your mom was verbally abusing me when you weren't home, right?" I questioned him. "Oh, the verbal abuse," Adrian replied dismissively. "You mean that thing you let me hear the other day? I think it's okay not to worry too much about it. I don't think Mom meant it." I could hardly believe my ears. "What do you mean, it's okay not to worry?" "I talked to you because I was in pain, Adrian. I can't understand why you're so carefree and cheerful." Adrian fidgeted, his usual nonchalance cracking under my glare. Meanwhile, Cecilia stood there smirking, watching us as if this confrontation might finally lead to my exit from Adrian's life. Perhaps she hoped I would leave him, thinking this was her chance. But it was obvious to me that she hadn't considered the damage her actions would cause. "You knew I've been busy recently," I said sharply. Despite me telling her several times, your mother kept calling me a slacker, interfering with my work, dumping all the housework on me. Even when I told her I didn't have time, she pushed everything on me, searching for things to criticize. "I'm done with this," I concluded. "That can't be," Adrian uttered, staring at me in confusion. "Adrian, if you don't believe me, that's fine," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not expecting your help anymore. Has there ever been a time when you actually did something for me?" I asked disappointedly. Even Cecilia, who had been gleefully enjoying the spectacle, seemed taken aback by my words. She snapped, "What a thing to say while being supported by Adrian." But it wasn't me who looked shocked this time. It was Adrian, his face turning pale. There was something he hadn't shared with his mother, and now it was about to come out. "Hold on, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm not supporting Hannah." Cecilia's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "Mom," Adrian said quietly, "I'm unemployed." Cecilia blinked, her smirk faltering. "Come again." "Yes," Adrian continued, swallowing hard. "I've been out of work for a year now." Cecilia was speechless. She glanced at me, then back at Adrian. She had no idea. Adrian hadn't told her. The whole time she thought I was the one leeching off him. The truth was, I was the one paying the bills. I quit my corporate job, launched a startup, and kept us afloat while he loafed around, pretending to job hunt. "So you're unemployed," Cecilia finally said, her voice rising in disbelief. This woman living off my son's dime," my mother-in-law started to stammer. "Stop it," Adrian interrupted, finally standing up to her. "Mom, I haven't supported Hannah in over a year. She's the one who's been covering everything. Her startup, the bills, everything." Cecilia's face was flushed with anger, her voice rising. Can you believe it? Not only did she lack gratitude, but she also holed up in her room, avoiding chores. So much for an older wife making a better life. I had to boot her out because my son doesn't need a wife who sits around. Now he can just take care of me. Whoa, what are you talking about? Adrian shot back, his frustration boiling over. I'm the one who's been unemployed. I've been dragging my feet while Hannah has been working her butt off. Cecilia stood there, her mouth opening and closing in disbelief, unable to comprehend why her son was so upset. You're unemployed? She finally whispered. Yes, and I've been thinking about divorce for some time now, I said calmly, and added, living alone sounds heavenly compared to dealing with this. I handed Adrian a lawyer's business card. His face crumpled like he was about to cry. His mother, still reeling from the revelation, stood frozen next to him. What am I going to do without you, Hannah? Adrian asked, his voice trembling. I sighed. You're a grown-up, Adrian. Don't count on people to take care of you forever. He had lost his job because he couldn't handle responsibility, always screwing up, brushing off consequences, and eventually quitting when things got tough. Reflecting on our relationship, it felt like he was more interested in finding a caretaker than loving me. I used to love his goofy side, but after years of one-sided commitment and constant nagging from Cecilia, I was done. Well, I said with a final glance at them both. Now that you won't have a jobless wife around, I hope you two get along. I'm not planning on looking after you anymore. With that, I hopped into the passenger seat of the small truck, ready to leave. Adrian tried to stop me, desperation in his voice. Don't go for the divorce. Please don't leave me. Before I could respond, my friend in the driver's seat yelled out, Zip it, freeloader! Adrian stood there, silent, finally grasping his situation. Since then, I've started living alone. Word from a friend is that Adrian and Cecilia sold the family home. They realized they couldn't maintain it with both of them unemployed. Apparently, they're now working part-time at a supermarket. But that's none of my business anymore. I've moved on, and for the first time in years, I'm using my time effectively, free from anyone else's burden.